In this video, we're going to talk about the number of zeros of a function. Basically, how many zeros can a function have? Alright, so I want to start by taking a look at two functions here. And we're going to ask two questions. What's the degree of each polynomial function? And how many zeros does the function have? Alright, let's look at the first one. Alright, we have f of x is equal to x plus 5 times x minus 3. Alright, so what's the degree of this polynomial? Well, if we were to multiply this out, we would get f of x is equal to, and then we can multiply this out, we would get x squared minus 3x plus 5x minus 15. And so that simplifies to be f of x is equal to x squared minus 3x, x squared plus 2x minus 15. Right, and as you can see, this polynomial has a degree of 2. It's a second degree polynomial, right? And you could kind of tell that, right? You can kind of imagine in the beginning, if I were to multiply these out, we'd get x times x, so we'd get x squared. So the highest power is 2, so a degree of 2. All right, and now let's ask the question, so it's a second degree polynomial, and let's ask the question, how many zeros does it have? Well, to find the zeros, right, we would set the output to 0, so we'd have 0 equals x plus 5 times x minus 3, and we would use the zero product property, which says that one of the factors has to be 0. So either x plus 5 is equal to 0, or x minus 3 is equal to 0. And we get a 0 of negative 5, and we get a 0 of 3. Right? And so if you count the number of zeros, how many are there? There are 2 zeros. Right? Here's one, here's the second one. Right, and so what we have here is we've got a second degree polynomial that has 2 zeros. Right, let's look at the second example here. G of x equals 2x minus 5 times x plus 4 times x minus 8. All right, now I'm not going to actually multiply this out to take all that time, but let's answer the two questions. What's the degree of the polynomial? Well, let's think about it. If I were to multiply x plus 4 times x minus 8, I'm not going to do that, but we would get something with an x squared in it. Right? And then I would need to multiply that by 2x minus 5. Right? And I'm not going to actually multiply that out. But imagine what we would get. We would get something with 2x cubed in it. Right? And something, something, something. Right? So right off the bat, even without doing the math, we can tell that this is going to be a third degree polynomial. Right? And think now, how many zeros would this have? And again, I'm not going to do all the work, but if we were to set this equal to 0 and set the different factors equal to 0, right, we would have 1, 2, 3. We would have 3 zeros. Right? And so a lot of times what happens is that you can tell how many zeros there are going to be if you know the degree. Right? This first one we had degree of 2, it had 2 zeros. The second one, it was a third degree, there were 3 zeros. Right? Does that always happen? Exactly. Take a look at this one, right? Third example here, right? What's the degree of it, right? Well, if we were to multiply this out, we would get something with x cubed in it, right? So this is a third degree. But how many zeros does it have? Right? If you look carefully, it doesn't have 3 zeros. It has 2 zeros. And that's because x plus 4 is repeated, right? So we would only have 1 0 and a second 0, right? This one is the same, right? It's repeated. So this one has a degree of 3, but it only has 2 zeros. What about this one? What about number 4? J of x equals x minus 2 cubed times x plus 7. Right? Well, let's remember what this means. X minus 2 cubed, what does that mean? That means x minus 2 times x minus 2 times x minus 2 times x plus 7. All right, let's think about that. What's the degree, and how many zeros does it have? All right, well, this would be a fourth degree, and how many zeros does it have? It only has 2 zeros. Okay, so here's the conclusion that we can make. Okay, right here. The number of zeros of a function, the number of zeros that a function has, will always be less than or equal to the degree of the function, right? So in other words, if we have a degree, if we had, let's say, a degree of 5, that means the maximum number of zeros would be 5, right? It could have 5 zeros, it could have 4, 3, 2, 1, right? But the maximum it can have is 5, right? Okay, so real quick example here. Let's write a third-degree polynomial in factored form that will have 3 zeros. Right? What do I mean by that? Right? Well, let's just call this f of x. Right? Let's write a third-degree polynomial in factored form. So in factored form means we've got things that are being multiplied, right? That will have 3 zeros, right? And I could make this, let's say, x minus 4, x plus 5, I don't know, 3x plus 1. Okay, and there we have it. Simple enough, right? We've got a third-degree polynomial, because if we multiplied this out, we'd have something with an x cubed in it, and we would have 3 zeros in it, right? It would have 3 zeros. Okay, you try these two, right? 6, I want you to write a fourth-degree polynomial that will have 4 zeros. And 7, I want you to write a fourth-degree polynomial that will only have 3 zeros. Please pause and do this. All right, so there's no right answer here. You could have done it any number of ways, but here's an example of what you could have written. G of x, let's write a fourth-degree polynomial with 4 zeros, so it would need to look like this. X plus 5 times x minus 4 times x plus 3 times 2x minus 5, something like this, right? If we were to multiply this out, it would be a degree of 4, right? Because we'd have x to the fourth somewhere in there. And we have, as you can see in factored form, 4 zeros. 7, I want a fourth-degree polynomial in factored form that only has 3 zeros. Okay, so you could have written a whole bunch of different things, but here's an example of what you could have written. H of x equals x plus 6 times x plus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 1. Right? It's a fourth degree because if we were to multiply this whole thing out, we would have x to the fourth in there. But we only have 3 zeros. We'd have a 0 of -1, +2, and then -6.